Hello, everybody. How you doing? All right, here we are. We're live. We're going to be talking about wrongful convictions today. Here we are. We're live. We're going to be. All right. How's the chat going? All right. Oh, hey. All right. So we got to wait for people to come in. So, but so yeah, we're going to be talking about wrongful convictions today. I tell you one thing that kind of got me kind of spurred up right now is I was watching on Linda Kay's channel. She posted a episode of Dateline, I think it is, or something. And let's see here real quick. It was Dateline 48 Hours Mystery for 2019, the interrogation Keith Morrison, and very interesting, um, you know, case, and there was a lot of interesting content in it that, in particular, well, there was a lot of information about cadaver dogs for one, which was very. I'm sorry, sorry, that's me watching Exhibit A on Netflix. But there's in this case there's well, it's basically about confessions again, and it actually has Laura Nyrider in the show. She actually gets brought on kind of as an expert in coerced confessions at one point when they're trying to get this guy out, and they eventually do, but it's through a pardon and not through an exoneration, unfortunately. But the guy was just happy enough to be able to get out. But the whole case is it was just a wreck. To be honest, it was just ridiculous to watch how they went after this guy. Oops, wrong one. There we are. And how they went after this guy, and the reason, and I mean, it's like nobody had the sense to go, wait a second, wait, whoa, back the truck up, right? Because the two people that actually did this, they actually hated. Well, they treated the guy that they said helped them. They treated this guy like crap. They constantly tormented this guy. Everybody in the neighborhood knew it, that they constantly tormented this guy. So it would make no sense at all that he would have been accompanying them on a robbery, which also ended up turning into a murder and on arson as well. So it's a pretty crazy case. So, hey, Amber, we're started. We're here. We're all the way live. You haven't started Exhibit A yet, but I'm watching the confession tapes. Oh, okay. Yeah, like I said, I've now covered the first two episodes of it because I put out an episode about episode 2. Or I'm sorry, I put out a video earlier today about episode 2, and that was another one where it was just like another just like head shaking my head, just going, dude, what is our system like thinking right now? Like seriously, like what is you just can't help but wonder what's in their heads, because it's just, watching these things, it's like, no, come on. A freaking child would know that rationale is just ridiculously flawed. But like, they don't care. It's all about the conviction. And it's like I said with my little hashtag, if you guys notice right below the video there, the little hashtag, wrongful convictions, create multiplied victims. And that's true. Because you got to think about it. With a wrongful conviction, all the people that are affected by it. There's the victim's family itself, right? There's the victim's family itself. Even though most of the time they don't realize that they're a victim at that point, because they don't realize that the person that actually did it didn't receive justice. So they're like unknowing victims at that time, in addition to being the victims in the first place, right? So it's like a double whammy on the actual victims. But then when you have a wrongful conviction, you then have the defendant, his family and loved ones, and literally the entire city or county or whatever that it happens in, because ultimately, when it gets straightened out, it ends up costing them a bunch of money, right? Their tax dollars that don't end up getting into repairing roads or whatever, because it has to go to pay something else, right? That's the type of thing, right? So this is why wrongful convictions are bad. And the fact that we do keep, sorry. A lot of notifications today. I don't know, but anyways, the in this particular thing where I was watching over on Linda Kay's channel there, the Dateline 48 Hours. This guy, he was like 18, but he had spent like 3 years in a special school because he was kind of mentally slow. So he'd spent like a few years in a special school. So he was kind of on like Brendan's, on par with Brendan, really. Okay. And here's the real kicker on this one. The one that really ground my gears, man, was when the arresting officer that came to arrest him and who eventually was the officer that interrogated him in a very questionable manner was actually an officer who he knew from the school that he went to or whatever. He actually knew this officer. He actually considered this officer a friend. And this officer was not his friend. It's sad to watch. It's really sad to watch. I couldn't believe it I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, unbelievable what they're doing to this guy. And when I'm sitting there listening to the neighbors say how, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense because they tormented him. There's no way he would have been trying to do that with them. It's like, and the neighbors are like, most of them are not consensus about this. And it's like, but the cops didn't care. They didn't care. And it's just like, So then later on in the episode, they actually bring a guy from Britain, an investigator from Britain, over, and he looks at he's one of the experts there in high up in the system where they have there in UK, where they completely rehauled their system of the way they interrogate, especially with juveniles and stuff, and back in I guess the 80s or whatever, they were like us still. Their investigators worked the same way and stuff. And the interesting thing in this video is one of the investigators that was there for the changeover, who initially resisted it and figured they would never solve any more crimes, was there to say he was actually wrong, because now they have like a 90% detection rate, accuracy detection rate, and so with that kind of accuracy detection rate, basically that's the highest. It's higher than ours. Okay, and our own innocence, the data coming out of our own innocence projects on exoneration tells us that, right? Basically, and so this guy was going through the confession. He was talking about how in Britain it wouldn't happen. How a juvenile like him, even an 18-year-old kid like that, but with mental limitations, there would have needed to be an advocate or a parent, somebody there. Just all these things that in Britain have to be in place. It's the way their system works. But it's like I said, that there was this one cop who was there for the changeover and admitted that he originally resisted it and thought it was going to be stupid and dumb, but was there to say, but no, it actually turned out to be pretty accurate. We have a 90%, accuracy rate, that sort of stuff. So that's interesting. And so he comes over to comment on this thing, and he's just, like I said, he was just conveying some of the things I was just saying. It was really interesting. If you guys want, go over to Linda Kay's channel and check it out. It's Dateline 48 Hours. Here, let me read you off the name. Here, I'll just get you the link. How about that? I thought this was very interesting, so. All right, what's everybody saying? Don't ever want to be involved in a murder case. Yeah, I hear you, Amber. I hear you. It's just scary. If they want to pin it on you, they're going to, it's true. It's like once they get tunnel vision and start using confirmation bias instead of doing their job right, it's a scary thing. What's the latest version of the current motion for relief with Steve Avery. David Beebe, that's basically, we're still right now in a holding pattern, buddy. We're just waiting. Judge Sukowicz is got to make a decision, but we just recently saw something filed in the dockets or in the court system or whatever. So it looks as though Judge Angie has requested another 90 days, or has requested more time. So, it looks like we're just going to be waiting a bit more. So, hope that answers your question. Oh, geez. Sorry that took so long. There was a weird hair on my keyboard, and it freaked me out. Hi, Ziggy. This is all on Linda's channel. I'm going to have to go familiarize myself with it. Yeah, check out Linda's channel, Amber. Yeah, go over there and hit subscribe. But anyway, this particular episode she uploaded was brilliant. So, You beat me, Erekose. When might a ruling come? Well, anytime in the next 80 days or so, I would say. Anytime in that time. But like I said, Judge Sukowicz is, like Zellner's tweet said, Judge Sukowicz has a very difficult task of trying to deny this in such a way, worded legally correctly, so that it doesn't just get batted back in her face by the appeals court. So it's going to be, I wonder if it's even possible for her to do in the first place, but I acknowledge that for her to even make the attempt, she's going to take every bit of time she possibly can, I'm sure. Right? Stands to reason. You know what I mean? And delays by the court, or like I said, she's taking her time because, like I said, she doesn't want to write something that's just going to get batted right back into her face, right? So she's going to try to deny this in a way that it makes the destruction of evidence and the willful, actions to cover that up, even into the present day. I mean, yeah, dazzle us, Judge Sukowicz. I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's ridiculous. And then talking about, everybody else is talking about the confession tapes, and I haven't gotten over to that yet. But that's another thing that's out right now, folks, for all the true crime folk like us, right? That's another thing that's out. I'm watching Exhibit A. I'm actually watching episode 3 now. So that's where I'm at on it. But there's a lot of good stuff out there to watch and absorb, and that helps us learn what's going on in our criminal justice system. And what was particularly interesting about that one on Linda's channel was at the end with that guy from Britain who was explaining their system and that sort of stuff. And that was very highly interesting as well. And it had Laura Nyrider in it a little bit. That was kind of cool too. So, I advise everybody to go over. And Linda K, Linda K listening. She's coming up with some content, folks. We've been over there talking with Steve Arredo and Kay Reitz from Eagle Nation Cycles. We had a live over there the other day. So, yeah, she's started up a little channel there. I mean, go check her out. Try to give her a little bit of give her a little bit of support. Just starting out, It's always toughest when you're first starting out. So, Hi, KCC, by the way. How you doing? Nice to see you. I watched the show the other day. It said more counties across the U.S. are active in wrongful convictions for money. Well, yeah. I mean, the whole thing is the whole thing of chasing convictions right now instead of justice is an epidemic. It's a problem. It's like, it's, when we think about it, we're like, we want to be tough on crime, right? We want to make sure that people that are bad criminals, especially violent criminals, particularly destructive criminals, and that sort of stuff, right? We want to believe that those people are going to get punished. and that sort of thing. And so that mentality is understood, and I get that some people feel it stronger than others, and that's where the whole kind of tough on crime kind of mentality kind of comes from, right? And I'm not necessarily not a tough on crime guy, but it's like what I'm saying about wrongful convictions. When we have clear data coming out of like the Innocence Projects and those sort of things that our court system is just ignoring. We have obviously this system over in the UK that's pretty marvelous. We're ignoring, it's just like, it's like our system's stuck in limbo, and it's like, I blame AEDPA because the federal courts now can't correct anything. The bar is so high of how what a case has to meet, the requirements it has to meet in order for federal judges to get in and course correct in the states is so ridiculously high. It's another reason why our state courts are just running away with it. In some places, in some other states, they have a pretty conscientious attitude, and they're actually trying to emulate the federal system. You know what I mean? Because our federal system is a lot like what they have in the UK. They have very, very strict guidelines about how they'll interrogate, especially juveniles, especially ones with mental limitations. That our federal system has all that. I wish AEDPA would either be slackened or removed, because we need our federal, judicial branch, our federal judges, course correcting in some states, because some states are just feeling like they can do whatever the hell they want because AEDPA is there to keep the government from or the federal branch from having any say in what they do. It's like, another way to illustrate that is, folks, remember when I did all the things about Brendan, when his Amici briefs, right? When he was, all the amicus briefs that were filed, he had 6 of them filed when he was petitioning the Supreme Court of the United States. He had six A briefs filed, right? And in those, the one that really struck me a lot was, number one, the one from the law professors, where they were quoting tons of Supreme Court decisions that support the point of view that to interrogate a minor, especially in mentally limited ones, using the full read technique, all this different stuff, where they showed that the Supreme Court has made decisions in the past declaring that you have to treat minors with special care. And so these law professors are citing all this law, that previous decisions by the Supreme Court of the United States and all that. And then in the prosecutors, current and former prosecutors brief, where they were quoting a bunch of law in a similar fashion to the way that the law professors were. And those were amazing. And if you guys haven't checked those out in a while, I suggest go back through my channel's library and find the A briefs again and check them out, because man, those A briefs that were filed for Brendan when he was petitioning the Supreme Court, those things were powerful. They were powerful. They were something else. They were truly something else. And all that support Brendan got, and he got it at that stage. Folks, do you know that most people that write amicus briefs, that they don't write them at the cert stage for cases? And the reason why they don't is because they feel it's most likely going to be a waste of time, because they usually wait until the case gets accepted and it gets to the second stage, where it's in the cert pool, what they call is the cert pool, I think is what they call it. Anyway, it's the second level. Like when the case gets accepted, it's at that point that usually A briefs will get written. Okay, but for Brendan, 6 A briefs were written while he was still at the cert stage, and that's another powerful kind of thing for people to consider, that because that doesn't happen very often. That's how much momentum is behind Brendan Dassey, and how much momentum is behind the wrongful convictions of youth and the way that they are interrogated in our current system, and it's powerful evidence of that. You think someone would be trying to fix the system, restraining? I think some people are. I just think that there's a lot of resistance. I think guys like Dean and Jerry are trying to make effective, positive change in the system, and I think there's other people out there too, like David Rudolph. I think David Rudolph is actually another one who's trying to make really good, positive, change for the system, and so there's some out there, but there's just a lot. There's still a lot there to resist. There's still a lot there resisting, I guess, is what it comes down to in the end. Of course, but there's a wrong way they blatantly make up a crime. There's got to be accountability in law enforcement. If there is so many cases showing up, clearly the system is broken. Yeah, well, or at least it's now getting attention called to it. You know what I mean? Now with Netflix and people making documentaries, and they don't have to convince the major networks, because now they can have outlets like Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and then in addition to all the cable networks, and all that. So now there's more marketplaces to shop your stuff around, right? So there's more stuff coming out, and there's a niche for true crime, wrongful conviction stuff. I mean, there's a niche for it, and so it's going to get filled, Addressing junk science is a good start. Yeah, I love that about Exhibit A, because that's exactly what Exhibit A is doing. It's going after junk science and wanting to point out junk science, which is great. And that's another thing that Dean and Jerry are doing. They started an organization called CIFS, which stands for Center for the Integrity of the Forensic Sciences, right? And the whole idea is to start rooting out some of the junk science that gets into the courtrooms. I like the way the guy put it in the video I did yesterday about George Powell, the guy from the first episode of Exhibit A, where his lawyer said the judge and the whatever, they all just listen to their expert, and if it sounds okay to them, then they're like, okay, let it in. It's let them testify or whatever. Like, they don't have the qualifications to know where they've made like a dubious error where they've miscalculated or whatever. They're not qualified for it because they're not a specialist in that particular forensic field, or whatever, right? So it really takes another expert to be able to see another expert's mistakes. So it's like, in having judges be the ones to choose is slightly imperfect, because they're not really learned in the advanced forensic science techniques that are required for the testimony that's going to be offered, right? So it's a sticky thing. It's like, we got to do something about this, because we do want to make sure that good science is getting in. We don't want crappy science getting in, because our courtrooms are a place of truth, to find truth, right? That's the idea. This chasing convictions for their own sake has really started to throw that whole thing kind of off kilter. But that's what we're supposed to be doing in our courtrooms, and in that spirit, we should be, minding that. Now, who's holding up the courts to have Judge Sukowitz another 80 days? Yeah, well, we'll see what she does. The fact that she's taking this long suggests that she's going to be denying it. And then it's going to go back to the appeals court, and we're going to see what the appeals court thinks. Because I got the feeling that the appeals court judges were not amused by the argument offered at the appellate level when Kathleen Zellner motioned to have this returned to the district court for a hearing. So you could tell that the appeals court judges were not amused with the appellate lawyers for the state and their argument, and how it was all procedural and didn't at all touch on any of the merits at all. And they were asking for more on the merits. They asked, that's what they were asking Judge Sukowitz to do, was hold something to find out things on the merits and blah, 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 that sort of thing, right? So anyway. And it's gotten to the point that every person has to have an attorney on speed dial just in case, right? If you don't have a good lawyer on hand, you can wake up owing a lot of money, right? Hi, Catnip. How you doing? My son's judge was just removed from being a judge for her actions. The judge made me homeless for 3 months. Look her up, Judge Brennan. Okay. Never answer my questions without a lawyer. I repeat, do not answer questions without an attorney. Right on, Amber. I typed that like a 5-year-old. Oh, no worries, Ziggy. So, yeah, so it's like I said. I mean, look, I keep looking at these, especially with wrongful convictions of youth. I keep looking at these cases. Another case, another case, another case. Devontae Sanford, John Bunn, Corey Williams. Just so many others that on my channel that I've looked at, and it's like the same things run through them. The same thing where it looks like lazy cops didn't know what to do, didn't know who really did it, wanted to solve it quickly, and so just pin it on a mentally challenged juvenile. And it's like it's like so obvious it's happening, and it's almost always that the major parts of the narrative are fed to the suspect, and it's like all these same things run through everyone. It's like when it's this obvious, it shouldn't be this hard to figure out. I don't know. That's the way I feel about it. So, Better Call Saul. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's I've covered so many of these wrongful convictions of youth where these look at the stat from the Innocence Projects, right? The stat about murder confession, people that confess to murder, right? They're finding out from exonerations that it's turning out that basically 1 in 4, okay, 1 in 4 murder confessions are false. And I imagine the number could be much higher. That's only what they're able to prove at this point. We all can see how reluctant the courts are to correct, when things have gone wrong. They do resist it. And so I imagine that number could even be a bit higher than 1 in 4. It might even be closer. It might be more than 25. It might be closer to 30 or 35%. Of murder confessions. It's like I said, that number is 1.25 because those are the number of exonerations that they've made, and so that's how they're able to determine that a quarter of confessions. Like I said, that number may even be higher. They haven't been able to prove everybody yet, or they haven't been able to prove, or help everybody yet, right? So anyway. Was there ever a time the system actually worked? I think a lot of times the system works. I think for a great deal of the time the system works. But I think there's real odd things that happen sometimes, and it somehow bumps the system out of its the way it's supposed to work. It gets and it happens when you have people and personalities and egos. It definitely happens. So I really have suspicions on if the lipstick murderer William Herons was actually guilty. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Actually, I've not heard of that. So, I know I've followed a lot of the serial killers. I found John Wayne Gacy to be a very, very bizarre guy. And I guess what was really crazy about that one was the fact that he was like so well loved in the community and that sort of stuff. Like, it made it difficult for the cop that ended up chasing him down. It made it difficult for him because John, everybody was well, kind of standing in that cop's way in ways because John was like so well liked in the community and just really bizarre stuff, you know. Uh, these are the things that bring us into true crime, right? I mean, we we see a very interesting puzzle one day that's or something regarding a crime or a a perpetrator or a victim or whatever catches our interest and we start to learn more, right? So anyway. Oh, John Wayne Gacy was for sure. Oh yeah, he was. Seriously, dude. No, I don't know, John. I'm sorry. No, I don't believe somebody else was coming into your house and hiding bodies under your house. No, I don't think so. That's yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, he had it hid it in plain sight. But the problem is his neighbors would constantly complain about the smell, you know, and so he would have to go under there with a couple bags of lime and throw it all around underneath there. And apparently there was a lot of cockroaches down there, and apparently like maggots. A lot of maggots, I guess, were down there and stuff. And this all added to that smell. So he had to go down there with lime every so often because the smell would end up, the neighbors would start complaining. There was another one that was really trippy over in, I think it was Detroit. I think it was Detroit. A guy named Anthony Sowell, Sowell, and he was a military veteran. He had served when he was like in his teens and early 20s, I think, and all that. But anyway, he had a crack problem. He hung out with a lot of the girls there, the prostitutes on the street that also like to do crack and stuff like that. And so he had a little house there. It was actually because he was I guess because he was able to use his veteran stuff or his, whatever it was. He had a pretty nice little like 3-story place and everything. And so he would have these girls over there, and they would smoke crack and whatever. And he had all kinds of stuff. Well, eventually, at some point, he kind of went off kilter, whatever. He started killing girls. Um, it was a trip. And the thing is, there was a sausage factory right next door to his house, or right next door to this house where he was, right? So whenever there was like a body decaying in like one of his trash cans or something like that, everybody would blame the sausage factory. The sausage factory had to like do like 2, I think, or 3 different like full-on renovations or whatever because they were constantly getting barraged by the local citizens because everybody figured the smell was coming from them. Yeah, that's trippy, dude. But this guy flew under the radar for a long time just because he lived right next door to that sausage factory, and everybody blamed the sausage factory for the smell. So trippy stuff. At least he worked at KFC and could say chicken bugs. Yeah, had to revamp the whole thing. Uh, Hell, he had bodies just laying around. Who did, Ziggy? Who are you referring to? And everyone thought he was such a nice guy. Are you talking about Anthony Sowell? Sowell? Whatever, however you would say it. Are you talking about the guy I'm talking about in Detroit? Anyway. So that one's trippy because, like I said, he was next door to the sausage factory. Okay. Yeah, he was, and everybody did say he was a nice guy. Everybody liked him. He was well liked, and even though he was a crackhead, he was well liked. I mean, that's pretty wild. You know what I mean? Yes, I believe that house is torn down now. Yes, he had a bucket in the basement that had a girl's head in it and dirt on top. He yeah. there was one time he actually was going to kill a girl. He brought her over, and I guess he was going to rape her, and she started to resist, but then he pulled out a knife, and she started to realize that she might end up dead, and so she ended up going along with it. She acted like she was all in, lovey-dovey with him, and she was into it and whatever, and by doing that, she took the murderous rage out of him. And this is a trippy story because, man, the intensity of this. So after it's all whatever, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll come back over later and we'll smoke some more crack," and that sort of whatever. He's walking her down the staircase and stuff. They walk past the room, and she glances just to the left inside the doorway, and she sees a headless body in the room. And she knows, and she talks about it. She knows in that moment that if she reacts to that, he's going to know what she's reacting to, and she's going to be dead again. So she managed to just keep walking and act like she hadn't even seen it. And got out of the house and stuff. I mean, crazy. The intensity of that, but I'm glad he was eventually caught. That's the big thing. Because he was, because of that poor sausage factory, man. They caught a lot of crap, and it wasn't them. I said Detroit. That's what I said. Oh, Cleveland, Ohio. You know what, Ziggy? You might be right. Cleveland. I think it might have been. You may be right, Ziggy. Anyway, you can look up Anthony Soul on YouTube, folks. Yeah, right? Survivor. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine walking by, seeing that, catching that out of the corner of your eye and not reacting to it because you're quick enough in your head to realize that if you do react to it, you're dead? Ooh, man. Holy crud. That's an intense moment. That's a super intense moment, No, I think you may be right. I think it may be Cleveland. I think you may be right, Ziggy. So that's fine. Doesn't matter where really exactly it was. It's the point that not as bad as that case, but Bambi Bambenek. Not sure about that one. I haven't ever researched that one or looked into that one. But like the one I was dealing with today, because I watched the episode 2 of Exhibit A with Norma Clark. And I mean, that is such a sham. The way they came after her 35 years later when she was a grandma and came after her saying that her old nightgown had blood spatter on it. And come to find out, there was a bunch of marks on it. There was a bunch of microscopic something on it. But almost every single mark tested negative for blood. Only one little speck tested positive for blood, but they didn't get a DNA profile. So they don't know whose blood it was. Right? It's like, but they still used that gown at her trial with the jury to show the jury a bunch of spots so that when they said spatter, the jury would key on spatter. But the problem is that most of those dots weren't blood, therefore weren't spatter. And it's like for her to have gotten convicted that way is just ridiculous. Killing older women like 50 or over to date, 3 dead and 2 that have lived. So, I mean, it's something I've been wanting to just keep preaching about here is that it's good for these communities that are paying attention to what's going on in a lot of these cases and a lot of these investigations. It's good that that's happening because the more we educate ourselves as a country, as the people of America, and educate ourselves to be able to offer informed opinions on these topics, we can, really start to mold the, the change we want to see, or help to mold it, and by at least pointing out that, look, we have a problem here, and look, it looks like this is a pretty good solution, or, I mean, it's just the way that the system is right now, like with its head in the sand, not wanting to acknowledge that there's a problem. That's the really frustrating part. You know what I mean? That's the part that's really just, off the charts. You know, hard to handle. So Detroit, okay. I don't know. There's a serial killer in Detroit killing older women in vacant houses. Oh, really? I remember seeing something on like Forensic Files that was similar to that. Like a guy was luring old older real estate agents or something like that to a house or something like that. Hello, Arlene. We need laws put into effect to protect the innocent. Well, we need. Well, it's like I was saying before. AEDPA is acting as a barrier from the laws made on the federal level from trickling down to the state level. Some states are allowing, they're just running away with the, doing whatever the hell they want, because they know with AEDPA that the federal branch pretty much can't do anything. They know that, so they have no incentive to want to get with the times. I mean, some do anyway. Some forward-thinking states are trying to emulate the way that the federal government does things, the way that the U.S. District Attorney's Office does things, and the way that federal agents do things. And there are some states that are doing that, and there's certain other states like Wisconsin that aren't. So no, it's guilty until proven innocent. It kind of is now, really. And it's like I said. I mean, we need to start taking it seriously, because we chase these convictions for their own sake. We're going to end up with the problem, like I was saying. The victims get multiplied. There's a double whammy on the actual victims, because they think they got justice, but they didn't really. So they don't know the joke's on them. So that's kind of a double whammy victimization there. Then you've got the defendant's family. There's another victimization. And then you've got, eventually when it all gets ironed out, you've got the taxpayers that end up having to pay for it. Right? So there's so many victims. There's a vested interest here, or should be, in wanting to get it right, especially since we have the data and we have all kinds of stuff showing us how we could do it better, all these sort of things. Why we are not paying attention to this is scary. So you like that, Survivor? Yeah. used to be said, yeah. There's a new show on Netflix, Exhibit A, about innocent people being wronged. Yeah, Arlene, I've done 2 videos about it. I did a video yesterday about episode 1 with George Powell, and I did a video today about episode 2 about Norma Clark. So Ziggy can't find the article. Oh, dang it. Right on, Catnip. I'm watching episode 3 currently, and it looks pretty messed up again. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's it looks pretty, but it looks pretty sad because I gotta wonder where the victim is in this because they never found the victim, but they ended up trumping. They ended up going forward with this case, and it's pretty. It looks pretty crazy. I haven't finished it yet, but it's pretty wild. You got some issues and questions for episode 3 for sure. Right on, right on. So, yeah, there's. I mean, like I said, it's important to think about. You know, I mean, I mean, it's like me. I get it. I want to. I want to be tough on crime too, and I want the violent criminals of the world who mean to do people harm and that sort of stuff. I don't want them to be out and causing mayhem, and so I can understand that. But when we have something that clearly points to how we're getting it wrong, and we ignore that in the interest of convictions for their own sake, I'm saying I realize a problem at this point. There's a problem. It's here. It can't be denied. Because the way our nation was conceived and the way that our judicial system was conceived, it was not conceived for the prosecutors to be conviction chasers. It's not the way it was meant to be. They were meant to be the gatekeepers of justice in our system. And it was supposed to be a very, important role. And I think for some prosecutors to this day, I think for some, I think it's still true. But I think there's some other ones, slimy ones, kick rats, who are just a little bit more slimy and that sort of stuff. So, Dr. Pepper refill. Oh, he's caught. Good. There you go. But it's like I said, wanting to be tough on crime and all that, we can't allow that to be blind us. We can't allow that to blind us from setting right some things that are quite obviously wrong. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Because I understand where the really gung ho, tough on crime people are coming from. I get it. I understand it fully. It's it's just it's because it's at the point where we've been able to see and we can actually define now certain things that are pretty much a tip off every time of something unfair going on or something of an injustice that is being perpetuated in our current system, and we gotta hopefully rein it in at some point. And like I said, I truly think it's going to require more people like us that are here tonight, all 19 of us, but more people like us and the people who are watching this later, of course, but more people like us getting together, learning about this stuff, learning about true crime stuff, learning about wrongful convictions, learning about rightful ones, right? Don't ever close yourself off from any aspect, right? So learn about them all, and like I said, we'll reach a point eventually, like some of us have after being in this for 3 years. We've reached that point where we can walk in and look at some facts on a case and go, there's probably something wrong going on here, just by looking at some of the bullet points, because we've seen enough cases and know about some of the bullet points that are troublesome. And if we see enough troublesome bullet points, then we go, okay, yeah, there may be something here that needs to be looked at. You know? And as more people get that way, these DAs and these judges and everybody else will start finding it much harder to be able to sweep their stuff under the rug. And it will force them to be honest. If we can't rely on anybody else to do it, we're going to have to do it ourselves. Right? So by our sheer awareness and our willingness to call them on their BS when we see it, but it's, that's why I said it has to be everybody getting aware and everybody getting involved and being, paying attention to what's happening, so that we can meaningfully, let the people in power know that, look, we're not amused. We're not amused with our police officers bullying, mentally limited juveniles into murder confessions. We're not happy with them feeding them the story. We're not good with that. We're not virtually every aspect of it. We're not on board with that. And it's going to take the people getting into our leaders' faces and letting them know, look, this is no longer acceptable. We don't like this. We need, the data is telling us, one thing. So we need to start listening to what the data is telling us. You know what I mean? So that's really my big takeaway for all this is we need our system to start paying attention to what the data is telling us. We need the system to start looking at the lessons that DNA is teaching us. We need that to happen. And hopefully sooner rather than later, and hopefully we'll get our investigators and our interrogators more reined in and like I said, maybe we need to do a little modeling on the system they have over in the UK, because if they have that high of a detection, rating or percentage, that's pretty good, and that's all I got to say, I guess. So anybody got anything they want to ask or anything? My grandson is like Brendan, and we don't let him talk to anyone unless a family member is with. So I do blame Barb a lot. Not sure how anyone else feels. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think, I don't know. Brendan was somewhat functional. I mean, he had certain problems. Well, it's mainly his SLP, his speech language problem that he had, that was really the thing that held him back, because it made it difficult for him to understand advanced verbiage and stuff like that, especially from multiple authority figures, and massive amounts of words and stuff and things being said to him. He found he would get overwhelmed by that easily and didn't know how to process all of it. He was pretty good with books and reading, but not at listening to people and that sort of. He had trouble processing and doing that sort of stuff. It was a problem for him, and like I said, but the thing is that you don't need an SLP to know that. Anybody watching that interview knows that those two guys, Wiegert and Fassbender, should have known right away that there was something not quite right with Brendan, and they should have been asking more questions about that. They should have, and didn't. Okay, they just proceeded to feed him facts because they knew they could. Okay, they didn't want to ask questions because they knew exactly what they wanted. They wanted to go ahead and feed this kid facts all day until he told the story they wanted. Right? They did the same thing with the kid in the show on Linda's channel. Okay? This cop that he had trusted, that he thought was his friend, was sitting there making him, going, oh no, because he said he said he ended up wielding something that was like a club, but they already knew that one of the couple, one of the two people of the couple, had wielded that, and so they were saying, no, you didn't wield that. No, what did you wield? What did you wield? And he just keeps guessing until he says knife, and then they go, oh, okay, so it was a knife, right? And it's just ridiculous how obvious it is that this kid didn't know what the frick happened. You know what I mean? It's common themes that run through all of these things. They again and again and again they run through these things. It's not hard to see, you know. Felt he was being awarded, and his mom should have known he was this way. Well, I get it. I get it. I understand what you guys want. You know, easier to bully him and prey on him, same as the Central Park Five. Exactly. Because you guys listened to the calls that we were listening to on Discord yesterday. I uploaded a video today. I don't know if how many of you saw it, but we were listening to the two calls where Jody calls Ma Avery and Steven calls Ma, and then Ma takes the two phones and puts them together so that Steven and Jody can talk. And in those calls, you hear Jody immediately jumping out like, "Oh, there's no way she found that car in 20 minutes." Or Ma Avery going like, "Oh, yeah, who has one key anyway?" Just they're pointing out the obvious things like right there immediately, right away. You know what I mean? And it's just like early on. And so that these investigators knew they were going to face these same problems in court. And that's why they targeted Brendan. And, it's just ridiculous. So Brendan got railroaded. They knew he was a little slower than the rest of the brothers. And, yeah, oh, absolutely. They realized that they could bully him and pressure him and that they could mold him to get him to tell the story they wanted him to tell. Absolutely. 100%. They were looking for the weakest link, right? Was it Antron's mother of the Central Park Five? She was great. Came in to get her. No, that was Yusef's mom. That was Yusef's mother. She came in and got him out of there. Yeah, that was Yusef's mom. Yeah, threatened to call the New York Times. Yeah, that was Yusef's mom. She was a champ, right? Absolutely. That was the other thing about the kid in Linda's video that over on her channel. That kid was asking for, because he denied he denied for like a long time, a couple hours, kept denying, and he asked like 6 times for a lie detector, that he would do a lie detector to prove that he wasn't there and had nothing to do with it, and they just kept ignoring that and all this stuff. It was crazy. So you guys will find it interesting. So anyway. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. It's about time for me to go to bed. So thank you all for showing up to talk about wrongful convictions. Like I said, it's up to us to continue to grow the community, to keep talking about this stuff. Obviously this community goes across different platforms and Facebook, Twitter, through YouTube, through all these various different platforms and stuff like that. So, it's always important to keep it growing, keep the awareness up, so that in the hopes that other people continue to happen upon it and get curious and hopefully become another supporter for justice in whatever cause they end up finding themselves, right? So, all right. It's been fun, folks. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. It's always a pleasure. It's great to be here to chat with all of you guys. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you. Hit that like button on your way out, too.